and welcome to Improbable Things. I'm J. Grace Pennington, and this is my podcast where I share 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast. I've got all 6 of my thoughts ready to share with y'all, so let's dive in. Number 1, I wanted, of course, to give an update on the editing of Firmament Eleftheria, and it's definitely going better than it was last week. I mentioned that I needed to find a new routine for it that would work for me, and what's actually been working and helping me to actually be motivated to work on it in the afternoons during nap time is just actually alternating it with doing crochet. So I love to knit and crochet, and I do a lot of that for charity, for different, blankets for homeless, preemie blankets for newborns in the NICU, things like that. And I really love doing it, and I find crochet and knitting very enjoyable and calming. So anyway, a lot of times I've been wanting to do that in the afternoon rather than using my brain to do the editing. So one thing I just started doing is I'll take my manuscript in red pencil, mark up a couple of pages, and then do a couple of rows of my crochet project, and then go back to doing a couple pages of the editing, and then a couple more rows or whatever, just kind of going back and forth. And that's actually been working for me. It's just kind of helped balance I really want to do this calming thing, but I really need to do this work thing, and just for some reason that's helping me more than it would if I'd be like, oh, do all the editing I need to do for the day and then I can crochet or whatever. And I think that may partly be because sometimes the afternoons can be like, the amount of time I have to work is not always consistent. Like the baby might wake up crying, or something comes up I need to do. And so I know that, and I know that if I do the editing first, I may not get time to do something else. And so anyway, just going back and forth where I'm making sure I get a little of each thing done, and just kind of like giving my brain a little relaxation in between. Anyway, it's kind of a funny way to go about it, but it's been working, and I'm making really good progress on the editing. And so I think definitely not gonna work out for the June release I was hoping for, but I think we should be able to make a July release. And number 2, just a quick note about Humanoid, because I still haven't worked on finishing that first draft of Firmament Book 8, but I think I decided what I'm going to do is work on it while Eleftheria is off with my editor, because that way I can really focus on Eleftheria right now. But then I'm going to have some time, a week, a couple weeks, I don't know exactly, while my editor is working on it. And so I can use that time to just kind of finish up the first draft of Humanoid. And I think that'll be good, because it'll also give me like a little mini deadline, like try to finish this before my editor gets the book back to me. So that's my plan. We'll see how that turns out. Number 3, I actually just yesterday received an update on the Eleftheria cover, and it's looking really good. I'm really happy with how it's turning out, and I'm just super excited to reveal that to y'all. I don't know when exactly I'll do a cover reveal. Again, I'm not working with hard and fast deadlines here. But once I get it finished, I'll just plan to share it pretty soon after that, and I'm just really excited about it. My artist is amazing and always does a great job, and this one is going to be no exception. So number 4, I've mentioned a lot that my 3-year-old Violet is very interested in spelling and writing things lately, and a lot of times the last few days while I'm cleaning the kitchen, she just sits at the table with a pencil and a piece of paper and asks me how to spell different things and writes them down. And it's always random words. Like she asked me the other day how to write penguin, how to write store, how to write toes, like just whatever word comes to her mind, she asks me how to spell and she writes it down. And it's so cute, and it just got me thinking, because she's going to be 4 in a couple of months, and I know when I was like 4 and 5, that's when I really got into reading and writing. And all that just made me remember, I think I was 5 when I wrote my first book. And it wasn't like that much of a book, but I just, during nap time and quiet time at my house, I decided, hey, like I know how to write. and I love books, so I should write a book. And I just sat down with a few pieces of paper and like folded them into a little book and wrote and illustrated. I don't think you can really call it a story, but a little book about what I would wish for if I had 3 wishes. And I really wish I still had that because that would be so fun. But I just have such a vivid memory of sitting down, drawing all these little pictures, writing down what I would wish for, and then like so proudly showing my parents and grandparents my little book. And so just watching her do all this writing is bringing back so many memories. And I find that so often in parenting these little ones that they're constantly like throwing me back to my own childhood and various things that I haven't thought about in a long time or whatever. So super cute. She may not be into writing like I am, but if she is, it'll be fun to watch that develop. Or if this love of spelling develops in something else, like it's so exciting to get to see, what direction she's going to go. So number 5, I wanted to just share again my currently reading. I'm on to the Mysterious Benedict Society book 4, which I think it's called Riddle of the Ages. Anyway, but I just started it yesterday, and one thing I knew that it had been written a while after the other 3. I don't remember how long exactly, but it had been a few years. And I found when I started reading it that a few years had also elapsed within the series. Like when we last saw the children, they were young, and now in this book, they're suddenly like, older. They're, thinking about going to college, whatever. Like I'm not clear exactly on their ages, but they're obviously quite a few years older than they were last time we saw them. And that's just interesting. Like I kind of had mixed feelings about it because I was kind of like, oh, like now I feel like, for one thing, these are almost like different characters because, they've grown and changed. And then the other thing is we weren't there to see all that growth and change. I think that's one thing I always struggle with when there is a sequel that leaves out a lot from between it and the previous installment. And I don't know, I just is always kind of hard to know, like there's been so much that has gone on in these people's lives that you haven't gotten to see, especially if it is a series where you've seen, a lot of more consecutive things in the past. Like in this, there were 3 books, one right after the other. And so you got to see these kids like learn and grow and all that. And then there's suddenly a big jump. Or like, I thought about this a lot with this series Picard, about, the Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation, where, we saw years and years of these characters on Next Generation, and then suddenly you jump like 20 years or whatever it is, and you're like, oh wait, what has happened to all these characters? Like we didn't get to see some of these relationships develop and families grow, and you kind of feel like a certain sense of loss. And but I do think there are positive sides to it too, because of course in a series you don't want to see everything. Like you obviously have to take out some things or it'd be super boring. And that you also, I don't know, I just think it's a hard balance to find in a series between what you do and don't show and how much of the characters' lives you portray and how much you don't. And those are things that I didn't think as much about before writing a series myself. And now that I'm having to make these decisions, I notice it a lot more in other series and put a lot more thought and contemplation into it. And just like the passage of time. But then also, when you do skip over a lot of time in someone's story, I feel like you run the risk of going to one of 2 extremes. One is where you've skimmed over so much of their life that, like I said, you kind of feel like you've missed out and this is a different person, and that's hard. But on the other side of the coin, I've also seen installments that pick up after, some time has passed and nothing's really changed. And that's really frustrating too, because then you feel like, well, why has this person just stagnated for the last few years or whatever? Like that feels like doesn't really endear them to you. If we like to see people grow and change, and if they haven't, you're kind of like, wow, that's too bad. So I don't know, I do think it's very hard to do. And obviously there's not a clear answer. You have to do what's right for your own series if you're a writer, but it is something I have to pay attention to in the Firmament series, because you also don't want to like overload your characters. Like I can't give them an absolutely insane life-altering adventure every week. Like they do need a break to just live their lives. So balancing the passage of time, it's always a challenge. So number 6, I talked earlier some about editing versus first drafts, and I've talked about that before, but I just was thinking yesterday as I was, jotting down my 6 things for this morning, just I think it's interesting how my perfectionism affects my writing, because I'm very, very much a perfectionist. And one way that I do think it comes out in my writing is that I do find it so much easier to do editing than drafting. And even though I've been avoiding my editing because it still is work, it's not nearly as much work as a first draft. And it's not even the amount of work, but just the sort of, it's more mentally, so much more mentally draining for me to do a first draft, because here's what'll happen. I'm sitting down to do my first draft and I really struggle because there's nothing there and I need to put something there. And I'm already admitting, like, I know already that what I'm going to be putting there is not going to be that good. Like, you basically just have to accept that, because the first draft is just never that good. And that's very hard for me to accept. Like, I want it to be perfect now. And so I think that's one reason that when I was younger, I never really made it very far in writing any books. Like, I would have some idea that I was really excited about. I'd get up maybe maximum 50 pages, if even. It was usually a lot less than that, and would abandon it. And part of that was because I would just get frustrated that it wasn't good, or I would be trying to go back and, fix things while I was still writing. And I couldn't ever get very far because I could not accept that it was not going to be perfect. And it's just hard. And even still, now that I've learned that you have to push through that, and you have to just tell yourself, like, literally as I'm typing, I'll be like, I know that this is like total garbage, but I'm going to keep writing it anyway. And that's really hard. But then I do find with editing, even though it's still obviously not going to be perfect, I am now taking something that's there and improving it. And that's easier for my brain to accept than telling it you have to write this, nonsense. I'm able to tell it, okay, like, take this nonsense and make it better. And it's a lot better fit for my perfectionist mind, I think. And so even though obviously it's still work, it's still draining, I find it so much easier in a certain sense to do the editing part. But then it also does, still it's never going to be perfect, from editing. And that's one way I have to use deadlines, is to force myself to just let go of a